Hi folks, Rich here. Hope you're doing very well today. We're going to take a look at the options panel today, just to get familiar with it. We can make a number of changes within this panel, and I think it's something that we need to get familiar with so that we can really take control of Studio One the way that we want to. Whether you're using Prime, Artist or Professional, when you load Studio One up, you'll usually be introduced with the Start page, unless you have some options set a little bit differently, and we'll cover those in just a second. To get access to the options panel, you'll see your interface in the center below your artist profile, and you can click on this. It'll bring you to your audio setup and processing. You can also get access to the options panel by selecting Configure Audio Device, and also Configure External Devices, where you'll see your installed MIDI keyboards and controllers. If you're not currently on the Start page, you'll always have access to this via the Studio One drop-down, where you'll see Options. It's telling us there that we can get here quickly by pressing Control and comma. Just like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from left to right and give a little bit of an explanation as to which parts of these do what. So under General, we have the ability to change our language. We could, if we'd like to, change this to German, for example. When we select this, it will say that it will be changed next time we start Studio One. Would we like to restart that now? At the moment, I'm quite happy with it being in English, as it is my first language, so I'll make sure that I select English and continue on. When Studio One starts, there are a number of options that we can select here, and it does enable us to open the last song, project or show each time Studio One starts. We can open a default song if we have a template saved for both a song, project or show, and we can also create a new song. This is very useful. When Studio One starts, of course, we can ask it to check for updates. We would check this box to do that. If we'd rather not check for updates each time, then we can untick that and select Apply. For now, I'm going to leave this checked. There's an Enable High DPI mode, and this enables you to sort of improve the graphics of Studio One interface itself. If we turn this off, it'll again ask us whether we want to turn off Studio One and restart it to make the changes effective. Again, I'm quite happy with this, so we'll leave it on for now. Under Appearance, we can make changes to the whole interface itself of Studio One. Some people quite like to have a light background. I myself like to have a dark background. But we can change this here. Luminance is what will change that. So we can go super bright and white, or of course we can go super dark. Now if we make changes here, we can always change it back. Maybe you change the hue shift to something like red, and then you turn the saturation up. Turn the saturation up to 100%, and we'll be able to change the highlights and accents to whatever color we feel that we'd like to. You can store that as a preset, and of course you can load that preset back in if you make any changes that you don't particularly like. You can also reset it to the default. And for me, I like this. On the keyboard shortcuts, you can search for things like Open. Okay, so what's stored under Open? Well, there's lots of different things here. Open Arranger Track, Open with Options, Just Open, Open QWERTY Keyboard. Well, this one's quite nice because if you don't have a controller keyboard, you can use your keyboard that you're using to type on as an instrument. We can press the caps lock on the keyboard, and that will open the interface for the QWERTY keyboard for us. Now, perhaps we wouldn't want to have that enabled. Well, we can remove this shortcut by selecting Remove. But perhaps we'd like to add it again. Well, we'll select Open QWERTY Keyboard. We'll highlight this box here that says Enter key, press caps lock, and then select Assign. You could do this for all of the different settings. You could change the shortcut setting for Open, for example. Next along, we've got Network. So, at the moment, it's ticked to allow remote control apps to discover this DAW. So you might be using an iPhone, a tablet, or an Android device, and you might be using Studio One Remote, for example. Having this checked enables the remote control app to discover your DAW on its local Wi-Fi network. Okay, so what about locations? Well, the first thing that we see is user data. And this is where your songs, projects, shows, and presets are saved. For me, it's saved under this drive, which is under the letter E, and it's inside the folder Studio One. If you ever make changes to where your songs, projects, shows, or presets are, or your main Studio One folder, you can select the three little dots here and navigate to that via your Explorer or via Finder. Below that, we have Enable Autosave checked. What this is doing is every 5 minutes, it's going to autosave whatever project I'm on incrementally. I could use cached plugin data on save, and I can also ask the copy to copy external files when saving documents. File types. This is where you'll find all of your file types, as well as the extensions, a description, and category. If we scroll down here, we can see that the majority of this is taken up by audio files. But if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see things like project. That's under documents, and show template, song, and song template. It also supports things like zip files, because within Studio One, you can actually save a song to a zip file with all of its included data. Of course, we have MIDI files, we have patterns, and we also have presets. If we scroll down even further, we can see that there's actually a number of video files that are supported as well. Studio One enables you to record and write music to video directly. So, 3GP. This is a really old video format, but if you'd like to record audio to this video, you can simply drag it into Studio One, and it will give you a video player to display. AVI, MV4, MKV, MOV, MP4, MPG, and Windows Media Video. Right, Soundsets. Soundsets are located for me under Users Rich C Documents Studio One Soundsets. Okay, but I do have a number of locations, and you can always add these by clicking Add, or you can remove them by selecting Remove. Navigate to the folder that you'd like, hit OK, and it will appear in this list. The instrument library. Okay, so the instrument library for me is under Studio One, Sound Fonts. If I'd like to add a different location, I can always click on Add, and again, I can always select Remove. VST plugins. So this one's usually a popular option if you're installing different types of VST plugins, whether that's instruments or effects. You'll find them here. You won't see a list of plugins here. That's via the plugin manager, and we'll look at that in a different video. But at the moment, you see that I have C program files, VST plugins. The same program files, Steinberg, and then VST plugins. I've got common files selected, and these three here are probably the most common folders that you'll probably expect to be using within Windows. I also have Program Files Native Instruments, SoundPaint, Spectrasonics, and Native Instruments VST Plugins 64-bit. You can always add a new location. I often find that it's probably better when installing a VST plugin or an instrument to install it to its default location. Make a note of that location and add it here. If it does, however, just install to Program Files VST plugins, you don't need to do anything because this location is already part of the setup. So, audio setup. Well, we have two tabs here. The first one is the audio device, and we looked at this in brief before. So the audio device is the interface that we're using. If you have an interface installed, you will see it appear here. So I'm using the Revelator at the moment. I could say I'd like to switch to Focusrite USB, or I'd like to switch to Studio 192. Also, if you've got virtual interfaces or cables set up, you'll also see them here, as well as obviously your default Windows audio if you are on a Windows machine. Below that, you'll see the device block size, and we can see the number of samples set. At the moment, it's set to 1024 samples, and this is okay with what I'm doing at the moment. But if I was recording audio and I needed to keep the latency low, I might set it to something like 32 or 64 samples. The sample rate is set the same as my interface, which is 44.1 kHz. This is fine for me at the moment, and I'm getting about 25 milliseconds of latency as the sound comes into the DAW, and the output latency is 26 milliseconds. When it says release audio device in background, we're letting it go. We're saying goodbye. That's the best way that I can kind of put it. So when we select release audio device in background, we're not going to be able to hear things like YouTube or SoundCloud, but we will be able to hear the audio within Studio One. If we leave this unchecked, we should be able to hear everything, both YouTube and SoundCloud. Under Processing, we can select Dropout Protection, Process Block Size, Process Precision. We can also select Enable Plugin App in here. So, first of all, Dropout Protection. For most of you, minimum will be good enough. If you're asked to make changes to this as part of maybe a little bit of troubleshooting, do it incrementally, from minimum to low, from low to medium, and so on. Sometimes if you select minimum and then go all the way up to maximum, you could introduce more problems than you ended up with in the first place. So as I say, do things incrementally. The process block size really should represent what the audio device is, and this is the device block size here. So if you ever get confused with people using different turns of phrase, such as process block size, or device block size, or even buffer size, then that's what that refers to. Process precision. Well, we can set it as single, 32-bit, or double 64-bit. Enable Plugin App. This enables us to send our plugins and effects to sleep for a little while they're not in use. This can be extremely useful when you're using lots of plugins that require a lot of CPU usage, such as reverbs, compressors and limiters, or even multi-effects units. It's a real quick and easy way to reduce CPU load. External devices. So, QWERTY keyboard is default. I've added a code 49 to this, and it's very simple to do. We select Add, we select New Keyboard, we select our manufacturing device name if it's different, and then we can select where we receive from. It's telling me already that this port is in use, so if you ever get this message, that's why. It's already set up, maybe you just need to reconnect it. If you ever see a little yellow triangle above this, if I unplug it, and then what I'll do is I'll plug it back in and turn it back on, you can see that that error is now gone away. So if you are playing some music and you're thinking to yourself, well, hang on a minute, where did my sound go? I'm pressing keys but nothing's happening. Just check in the options panel here, and that will tell you whether it's connected or not. The advanced. Okay, so for most people, might not want to delve into this area. It really just gives us a number of different options regarding what we see and the way things are colorized in the editing section. So we can enable the crosshair cursor for tools. We can locate when clicked in an empty space. So if you're not sure where your cursor is or your mouse, you can have this enabled if you're not sure. We can apply a folder track color to content, and also we can colorize track controls. Now what I'd like to do here perhaps is apply a folder track color to the content, so everything within that folder will be colored the same as the folder. I'll select Apply. Automation follows events. Well, yes, that's great. If you'd like to, say for example, have your automation on an event and then copy that event to a different location and have two versions of it, the automation will be carried along with it. You've got a few little settings here, default envelopes for new audio tracks, such as volume, pan and mute. Under Audio, you can select Enable Play Overlaps for new audio tracks. Use real-time processing when updating mastering files. Under MIDI, we can select different things in relation to MIDI specifically. Chase long notes is kind of a cool little feature. If you've got a really, really long note and you'd rather not sort of reverse or go back to the beginning of that note, if you have chase long notes enabled, what will happen is it will actually play the note as if it was playing it from the beginning. It can be useful when trying to work out what it sounds like. Cut long notes off at part end. So if you've got a long note with a long release, you can cut this off at the end. For me, timecode follows loop, chase long notes, and enable retrospective recording is something that I particularly use a lot. The retrospective recording really is just a way to capture the recording or the changes on a controller without having record enabled. It will record all of the input that you created, and then you'll be able to click on retrospective recording within the arranger and input all of the data that you've just played in. The console, well, this really just enables you to make changes to the console itself, such as we can enable the undo. We can colorize channel strips if we'd like to. We can select the fader mode, whether it's set to touch or jump. Or we can select the plugin menu, basic or advanced. Jump can be really good because if you've got your mouse hovered over 0 decibels, you'd like to click on that, but the fader is at the bottom, well, it will jump directly to the place where you click on it. I like touch for the moment. It means that it works more like a traditional fader, where I'd literally need to grab hold of the fader and drag it up and down. Synchronization. So if you have external devices, you can sync them here, and you can input your MIDI timecode and your MIDI machine control. And services. There's a warning here kind of for a reason. I'll be careful for now, I promise. Okay, so within here we can select ARA plugin support, for example, and we can disable that here. We can do the same thing with VST3 plugin support and all of the other supports that we have available to us. If you ever find that something's not working for you correctly, just check in here and make sure that it isn't already disabled, and then you can re-enable it from here. For the most part though, I would leave this services tab intact as it is. So that's the options panel. I hope this video helps in some way, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.